Chapter 26, Twin Peaks. Drip, drip, drip. I turned in anticipation as the dust cleared. Sam had his back turned to Leo. Blood dripped from his hand, causing my heart to sink. Oof! Leo fell face first. As he did, Sam raised a part of Leo's katana high in the air. "That's impossible," Kel replied. "The kid snatched off half of Leo's talon?" We all stood silent like deer in headlights until the crowd erupted. As they exploded in excitement, it began to sink in. Our group stood in awe, unable to believe the scene in front of them. "Winner, Theta Delta Legion!" "All right, Sam!" I screamed, cupping my hands around my mouth. I stood, allowing the boy to soak up his long overdue recognition. The rest of the group stormed toward Sam exuberantly. He powered down as the team tackled him. "Theta! Theta! Theta! Theta!" The crowd chanted loudly as the group alternated between patting Sam on the back and hugging him. "Talk about an upset," Luke grunted, exhausted. "Sam, why didn't you tell us you were this awesome?" Joe exclaimed. "Good job," Jacob added. "I'm so proud of you," Sai continued. "Yeah, that was just amazing," Eve seconded. Sam nodded, staring me down with a look of appreciation written on his face. I walked over and extended my hand to congratulate him, as Sai and Eve looked on, visibly emotional. Sam stared at my hand before knocking it to the side and pulling me in for a hug. He squeezed me as everyone looked at us like we had two heads. I surveyed the faces around me, playfully embarrassed, as Sam held on to me unapologetically. "Thanks, Tim," he replied via BAU. "I couldn't have done this without you." I stared at him, shaking my head, as Eve and Sai gave each other satisfied smiles. "You wouldn't have done it without Emmanuel," I replied. "Exactly, but you helped me figure that out," Sam replied. "You guys want to be alone?" Luke replied sarcastically. Sam released me as we turned awkwardly. "Have I told you guys how much I love this Legion?" Eve added, wiping a faint tear from the corner of her eye as Sai chuckled, mimicking her actions. "Come on, don't make it awkward," I pleaded. "Oh no, after what you just did, you deserve any and everything these guys fire your way," Jacob replied, as the rest of the group exploded in laughter, ending the awkwardness. "Theta," said a voice, catching us off guard. We turned to see Leo limping up to Sam. It was awkward for a second as he extended his hand. The rest of his legion looked less than excited about his gesture, as Sam stood, thrown for a second, before shaking his hand. "I haven't had that much fun in a fight in a while," he replied, smiling from ear to ear. "Great match, man." "Thanks, Leo," Sam replied bashfully. "I wouldn't say it was fun, but I can't deny we were awesome." Eve cut her eyes. I chuckled to myself as I finally sensed the presence of the old cocky Sam returning. "Please tell me it's okay to make fun of him again," Eve replied, causing even Leo to chuckle. "Well, I'll see you at the council evaluation," he replied with a parting smile. "But you're all right with me, Theta." He turned to leave before stumbling. Before he could blink, Sam shot to him, making sure he was sturdy. "Same here," Sam replied, as the Alpha Beta Legion stared at him, surprised. "Thanks," Abby replied, taking Leo. They stared at Sam in a politely thrown manner as they walked away. "Go ahead, Sam," Jacob responded. "We'll meet you when you get back." Sam nodded with a smile as he trotted off. The initial reaction was jubilation, but it had quickly turned. I watched Sai, Luke, Danielle, Uriah, and the twins, and they had looks that were not so happy. Uriah sat on a bench, almost meditating, as Luke jumped up and down like he was psyching himself into a warrior's mind state. Sai stood looking forward, rubbing her elbow. It was a dead giveaway. She was nervous. Danielle stared at Abby as she released Leo before he entered the corridor leading to the council chambers.
"Are you nervous, Zach?"
Joe replied.
"No,"
Zek shot back quickly.
"Well, I don't know. Are you?"
Joe nodded bashfully as Zek placed his hand on his shoulder empathetically.
"We just have to hold our own. We have 2 Doms, the grandson of the Liquid Flame and an ambassador's daughter on our team. We have the advantage,"
he reassured Joe. Joe smiled confidently.
"Besides, I would never let anything happen to you,"
he shot.
"And I know you wouldn't let anything happen to me."
"So when does it start?" Eve asked, looking around. As she did, fireworks shot off, startling us. A fireworks show exploded out of nowhere. It was almost as if the fireworks were liquid as they exploded, transitioning into animals and different types of shapes. Slowly, the liquid took on a human form as it soared toward the surface. "What's going on?" I questioned. Wha-boom! The liquid exploded into the ground. As it settled, steam began to rise, creating a thick fog that concealed the identity of the user. "How about that?" a voice let out, emanating from the fog. "How about that, ladies and gentlemen?" As he spoke, he exited the fog with his hands raised before clapping as he walked toward us. The crowd exploded in applause. "And who said that this trial wouldn't be worth the hype, huh?" he replied, smiling from ear to ear, placating to the crowd. "Oh, give me a break," Eve cut via BAU. I shook my head as everyone giggled. "Stop, you guys," Jacob shot via BAU, placing his finger over his mouth. He was a handsome man with extremely long blonde hair that had weird tassels at the end, which kind of gave it the look of a ponytail. He wore a long robe that seemed to be either too big or too small as he walked between us and the Alpha Beta Alpha Legion. "And what a fitting end to such an epic trial, huh?" he continued in a cheesy voice that made me cringe as the crowd exploded once more. "A Legion duel would be the way to go. It's only fitting, am I right?" I shook my head, covering my face in shame as he continued. "My name is Simon Buriel. I am the head coordinator of the Light Guard trials, and it is my extreme pleasure to conclude this battle." As he spoke, Sam and Leo trotted back and joined us. Sam smiled from ear to ear. "So, how did it go?" I shot via BAU. The look on all their faces was a dead giveaway that I wasn't the only one who was pondering this question. 9.6. That one annoying guy still gave me a 7, but considering what I went through to get here, I'm happy," he replied proudly. "Thank Emmanuel, that's a relief," Sai added.
"Yeah, 6 down, 6 to go,"
Pete added.
"If we win this duel, we have our choice of school and a surefire Legion acceptance."
We all nodded, ignoring Buriel's monologue in the background.
"Yeah, win and we're in,"
Eve added.
"And for once we have the advantage."
"What makes you say that?" Sean cut in.
"We have the best sound user in the past century's personally trained grandson, 3 Doms, an ambassador's daughter who has had the best tutors privilege can buy, and an elemental prodigy. I'll take those odds in a fight,"
Pete seconded. Sean nodded, smiling. "It would seem that way, but you forget I fought with these guys for hundreds of years. I can tell you this, if you do have an advantage, it's slight at best. Benjamin is also a member of the Nazarite line. He's the older cousin of Cadmiel, but 1,000 years more experienced and 1,000 years more powerful," he explained. I would say, with Jacob, Tim, Sai, and Sam gone, the only prospects left on your team able to pose any type of threat to him is Luke. He turned to Abby, then to Danielle. Danny has a past with Abby. I'm sure she shared with you guys what Abby disclosed to me. They had the same tutors and were so evenly matched that to this day, neither one has ever beat the other in a sparring match cleanly. It always ended the same way, he continued. He turned to two girls that sat on the end of the ABA Legion line. One was around our age. The other looked to be around the twins' age. One was a little blonde girl, and the other was stunning brunette. Judging by their facial features, they were obviously closely related. Uni and Ruth are one of the most powerful tandems I have ever met. They have been trained to fight as one since they got here. Millenniums of training to learn to fight multiple enemies as one. The closest thing you guys have to counter are the twins, and no offense, but they are nowhere near ready to meet them head on, he explained, smiling at the twins. For once, they had no objections. It was as if they knew what he was saying was the truth. Sean turned to Kel. Whatever you think about Kel, he is by far the most powerful vert I've seen, and he, like Eve and Uriah, is a sound trait, and an amazingly adept one at that, he continued. As he finished his sentence, he turned to the final guy in the Legion. He had short brunette hair. He was a short and stocky kid whose muscle cut through his armor. He was an intimidating sight from the moment I arrived. I didn't see him often with the rest of the group, and outside of the trials, I never saw him. Tommy is an Eli like Tim and Jacob, he continued, catching me off guard. Jacob didn't blink. It seemed like I was the only one who was surprised by his words. Tim, you didn't upload the trial debriefing, Sean continued before Jacob cut in. And judging by your reaction, you still haven't, he chastised. Yeah, well, regardless, the Eli tribe is one of the more decorated families in the Heaven Realms, with two other families with their level of prestige, the Jace and Michaels tribes. They're very large families with intimidating reputations. The Jace are usually seen as the most adept thinkers. The Michaels are generally powerful physical fighters. The Nazarite Bahirs are a branch of that family. The Elis are generally the pinnacle of both the physical and mental. They generally are exceptional guardsmen, and Tommy is no exception. The crowd erupted, ending our conversation. Sean gave us enough to ponder as we all waited in silence for the crowd to calm. At this time, I will ask that the remaining prospects from each legion approach. The rest, please return to your barriers, Simon ordered. Miss Hikari, please forgive me, but as you were scratched off at the beginning of the trials, you were knocked out of consideration. As you know, you passed your evaluation, but we can't clear your Earthborn body medically. I truly am sorry, but rest assured, with what you did at the Battle of New Angeles, the Hannock simulation, and the Venus trial was more than enough to pass you, as you know from your evaluation this morning. We all nodded, having been debriefed by Max and Jade earlier in the day. I hugged Sai, congratulating her, as the remaining members of our legion walked back to the barrier. We all continued, wishing each other luck. The ABA Legion did likewise before the participants walked out. Those of us that were left over made our way to our customary barriers. Let's give congratulations to Miss Sarai Hikari, he continued like a ring announcer as Sai bowed graciously. As cheesy as this guy Simon was, he had a point. It was a fitting way to end the trials. I couldn't believe it. After everything we had been through, it was all boiling down to this. The trials had been everything we feared and then some. They tested our loyalty, faith, and everything else. For the most part, we succeeded. This would be the final challenge, and honestly, I had no idea how it was going to play out. The hard reality was staring me in the face. I could make the excuse that I was excited, but in actuality, I was shaky on whether or not I felt we could pull it off.
Man, I couldn't be more nervous if I was actually fighting in it, Eve uttered.
I affirmed her words with a nod. So, how does this work? I asked Pete. He hesitated, showing a bit of butterflies himself before he responded.
Well, it's going to be like your fight with the children of Loki. It'll start with 2, and as one falls, someone else steps in when the battle is done. The last team standing wins, he explained.
Oh, I thought it was just going to be a free-for-all, I responded.
No, Pete continued. It makes sense. It takes trust in your Legion because it is at the Legion's behest. They step in when they think you need it.
Yeah, which has been a problem in years past, Jade replied, catching us off guard.
Jade, Sam replied exuberantly. Did you see me?
Jade smiled big as he replied.
The whole realm saw you. I couldn't have been prouder, he replied, hugging Sam, hoisting him in the air as he did.
Bravo, Max added.
Where have you guys been? I asked, turning to them.
Jade dropped Sam and turned to me like he was confused by my words.
I had to get my first students, didn't I? He replied, half hugging me and half choking me.
It was weird how far he had come in his mannerism in a month. The robotic expressions were no longer evident.
Did you guys get caught up?
Jacob added.
Yeah, Philip is almost as good as Sean here. He put up a dimension wall that prevented anybody from coming in, Max replied. It was a setup from the beginning.
How do you know? Jacob replied.
That dimension wall was put up well before Sam and Tim arrived, Max replied. Considering Sam and Tim had just gotten their mission yesterday, we have to assume it was someone who had access to sensitive information about our Legion. It's starting to get dangerous for you guys. The Light Guard will be on high alert from here on out. Be careful, especially you two.
He illustrated his words with a point toward me and Sam.
Us?
I questioned, verifying his physical point. He turned to Jade, showcasing a slight hesitation before taking a deep breath and continuing.
Sam, Tim, I get that you guys haven't been here long, but even by our standards, the things that you guys have been doing, they're not normal, he continued. We got the reports from your undertaking.
His words gave me pause. I stood, not knowing what to say. Sam looked more confused than I did. I stood attentively as Sam nervously waited for his response. How? I replied. I mean, I thought the barrier scrambled everything and cut us off from the heaven realm. He shook his head, staring out at the arena cautiously.
All living things have light, so they're connected. Once we reach the Earth realm, we have the resources to connect to the memories of any being with light energy flowing in it, and extracted the feed, Max continued. But that's not what's important. After looking over the tapes, I don't want to jump the gun here, and we would still need to find John to verify our assumptions.
He stopped before he forced the words out.
We believe you two are the witnesses of God, he uttered, staring into our eyes empathetically.
I felt like someone had knocked the wind out of me. My heart was beating fast, and my mind was flooded with the ramifications of his words. Jade continued waiting on a response, as I tried to wrap my head around the words he had spoken.
It would explain the connections between you two, Jacob replied.
And that language? Sean added. His words sparked interest from Jade, who turned to the boy, surprised by his words.
What language? He replied.
Sean turned to Jacob for corroboration.
Well, we weren't sure at first, but we're pretty sure it was, he explained, pausing, turning to Jacob a second time.
Jacob nodded, co-signing Sean's recollection of events.
What was it? Max urged.
Well, like I said, I'm not sure, but from the what little we deciphered, We believe it was the first tongue, Jacob explained with a sympathetic shrug.
But how?
Jade replied.
Most angels don't know that language.
I had no idea what they were talking about. I stood waiting for them to wander into territory I recognized. Sam wasn't as patient and cut in immediately. What is the first language? He pressed. Jacob looked at Sean, thrown by Sam's demeanor and comment on the situation. The language you and Tim were just speaking? He prodded, befuddled.
Wait, Tim can speak a different language?
Pete pressed. No, I shot. My words seemed to add more confusion to the jumbled mess. So neither of you remember speaking an entirely different language? Sean pressed. When? I shot. The whole talk you gave Sam, Sean fired. The thing that shot his power into another orbit. I racked my brains, trying to remember what he was referring to. What are you talking about? I responded. I was just talking to Sam. Yeah, me too, Sam replied. I just remember him waking me out of my funk, but I never heard a different language. Interesting, Max added. And you sure you guys heard this? Positive, Jacob responded. Will someone please tell me what the first tongue is? I shot. Max scratched his chin, weighing his options. He stared out at the arena, showcasing a level of uncertainty. The battle was edging closer to a start, and he seemed less than thrilled about having to go into another long exposition. There is too much information to explain in so little time, especially at such a pivotal time, Max replied. We'll have plenty of time to fill you in on all the details when this is over. Right now, it's more important for you to understand the security around you is going to be thick. Both of you, Academy or not, you may be the two most important people in the Heaven Realm. You're the first people to speak to John in years. There were a million things whizzing through my head. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not Enoch, and Sam isn't Elijah, I protested. Like I said, there isn't enough time to explain this. I know there's a lot of stuff being thrown at you, and yeah, it's all extremely important, but right now, your Legion mates need all the help they can get, Max responded. I went to respond, but before I could, Pete stepped in. They said they don't know. It's just a precaution right now. I'm pretty sure if you guys were the witnesses, John would have said something. Really, he's the only person who knows their identity, Pete responded. But Zach and the guys need us right now. We'll figure the rest out later. I nodded, agreeing, even though a part of me was still nervous about their words. But if Sam wasn't making a fuss about it, I wasn't going to either. Besides, Pete was right. I could figure things out later. Right now, my team needed me. Okay, we'll handle it later, I responded. It looks like it's going to be the twins versus those two girls first, Sam broke in. I closed my eyes and linked back into the Legion BAU conversation. So, how does this work again? I questioned. Tim, Jacob grunted. I rolled my eyes. Anybody but him, please, I shot, causing the group to laugh. 2 fight at a time. As one drops, the next Legion member steps up. At any time, the next Legion member can step in, regardless if they are needed or not. This has caused problems in the past. The prospects are graded, and the match is over if someone intervenes in a battle too soon. This may cause the member who is tapped out to be dropped from consideration if they did not score high enough on the pre-trial score, Jacob continued. It generally goes from the weakest to the strongest. Why not the other way around? I shot. Well, if for some reason the best is beaten or worn down, he or she may be the difference in winning and losing. Besides that, they generally are based on the contestants' pre-trial evaluation. Therefore, the Legion members with the lowest scores fight longer because they are the ones who need to showcase more.
Normally, in fights like this, the top-tier Legion mates won't even participate if the duel is lopsided enough. But in our case, everyone is probably going to be needed, Pete interjected. The twins stepped forward as the rest of the participating Legion trotted over to the barrier. So, what's the plan? I asked, as Uriah and Sai entered the barrier. Well, for now, based on Uriah's assumption, we felt the twins were the best combatants for those girls. It's going to take a combined effort, and with me and Luke being saved for the more powerful fighters, we had to go with the boys, Sai replied. But I felt bad. They're just kids, and to make them go first, they just sounded so nervous. I found the twins as they nodded to the instructors. He gave them instructions. Sai was right. The two small children were nervous, and I could see it written all over their face. I watched as Joe nervously rubbed the back of his neck, trying his hardest not to make contact with the smallest of the two girls. Zek stood staring stoically at the proctor less event, but I could still sense the nervousness in his biorhythms. I hoped the kids would go out and perform well, but as Sai said, they were young, and the big stage could end up being a little too much for them, especially considering what Sean said. The boys bowed as they and the girls bounced to opposite sides of the arena. "Here we go," Jacob replied, crossing his arms. "Zek and Joe, we're going to start with the same strategy we used at the Battle of New Angeles. Go one at a time. Joe, you go first. Zek, you sit back for a second, study their techniques, and if they're too much for Joe, you step in and end things," Uriah ordered. "You sure about this?" Sean added. "Those girls are no joke, and their tribe fighting style is honed. It was hard for me and Herschel to fight these girls one-on-two." "Yeah, well, unfortunately, I don't have enough info on Zek and Joe's fighting style to mount strategy, nor do I have enough info to counter the girls. I have to see in live action, and with Tim's help and Pete's quick thinking, I can break down their psyche and mount a better strategy. But right now, this is all we have," Uriah replied. "That being said, do you have any insights based on your experience fighting them?" Sean pondered for a second, then shook his head. "Not really. I never fought them from the standpoint of an equal. It was usually playful sparring or me training them." He stopped for a second, with his hands on his hips as if to be forcing a thought. "They're both dematerializers, and that's the key to their tribe's fighting style. They are good at timing and work with each other. They link via BAU, sight, sound, reflexes, until they are virtually two people fighting as one, with all the advantages of being two. But other than that, it's all I have. The way I used to beat them can't be done by the twins, so it would be a waste of time." Uriah nodded. "Well then, we go with the original plan," Uriah shot. "Joe, you ready?" Sam added. "I think so," he shot timidly, trying to stand confident. "Ready? Begin!" Just as the proctor spoke, Joe powered up. The girls stared at him, smiling. "Joe, you already know how this is going to end. Just tap your brother in," the smaller girl warned. "You can't beat me without my sister or my tribe style. How do you expect to beat me and my sister?" "Shut up, Uni," Joe responded. "That was then. I've been training with Jacob, Sam, and Uriah. I'm way better now." Joe's body exploded, covering himself in fire. "So, you learned your tribe traits as well," Uni responded with a smile. As she did, a light exploded, covering her and her sister. When it dissipated, her and her sister looked like outlines of themselves made of light. Joe grunted. "How do they know each other?" Eve added. "Zek, Uni, and Joe are friends. It was one of the reasons our master chose her and her sister for our legion. All throughout their time at school, they trained together. No one knew them like Uni. I'm sure you've noticed these people on our team were not chosen by chance.
Each of them was hand-selected by our prep school head to rival you guys. Unlike them, no one knew your strengths, powers, or weakness, so they just got the best of the best to oppose you. But Danielle and the twins, they were fair game, Sean explained. How do you know all this? Jacob replied. My father is a high-ranking official here, so the inside stuff I got from him, Sean replied, staring forward. I'm privy to a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. The connections to Danielle and the twins, well, it's been widely speculated for some time that it's all been planned to match us against you guys. We all had assumptive looks on our faces, not really surprised by anything at this point. I turned back to the arena as the two pint-sized fighters stared each other down. Okay, Joe, we're counting on you, Uriah ordered. Try to hang in there long enough to give us some tact info. Joe gave an agreeing nod before powering up even higher. His hair looked like a flame from a candle. Zoom! He shot across the arena, leaving a fire streak. Swift dodge! He swung as Uni and her sister Ruth ducked, dodging the punch effortlessly. Dodge, pow! He ducked a kick, but as if her foot slowed time, she caught Joe with a kick to his gut, dropping him to his knees. How? He dodged it, Sai replied. I saw it. Sean shook his head. That's the power of their style. They make instant corrections because there are two sets of reflexes, not one. You can't make one move. It takes 3 or 4 moves ahead, and to top it all off, you're going against two different minds. It's almost impossible to defend, Uriah replied in a frustrated tone. Flip, crush! Joe flipped forward with front razor kick as Ruth and Uni dodged the blow. Joe's foot, aided by the wind, plunged into the ground, creating a huge crater from the power. Joe was quick, fast, and powerful. Against anyone else, I would have pegged him a good fight, but these girls weren't going to be beaten by outright power. It was going to take intellect. Block, block, pow! Joe blocked as the girls threw punches 2 at a time, one after the other, knocking him off balance. As Ruth punched him, Uni flipped off of Joe's high guard and nailed him with a back kick to the face that sent him flipping back towards Zach. Zach caught him, holding him and stopping his momentum with one hand. As he did, Zach stood up, causing Joe to stop him. I'm okay, Zach, he replied. I got them. Zach nodded, agreeing to let him keep going. I didn't know what Joe had up his sleeve, but I hoped it was something effective. Smart kid, Uriah replied, sparking a reaction from everyone. What? Eve shot. Just watch, Uriah responded, pointing forward. Joe stood to his feet and exploded in power like before. Flash! He shot forward, charging the girls. Flash! Up! Just as the girls were about to attack, Joe shot in the air like a missile, stopping the girls in their tracks. Element Alpha, Light Command, Lightning Shot, he replied, crossing his arms in his face. Erupt. Boom! The lightning roared, then shot right to the feet of the girls. Flash! As they jumped backward to avoid the shot, Joe appeared right behind them. I got you, Uni, he replied. The girls spun around, unaware. Wham! Joe hit her with a punch that sent a ripple throughout the stadium. Ruth moved to counter, but Joe was too fast. He flipped backward, clearing the area, gearing up for another attack. Kaboom! He sent a wind shot that came from above and hammered Ruth with the power of a meteor. I stood watching with my mouth open. I understood the boys had been training for years, and although I had a tremendous power, my technique was basic. Joe maintained his elemental armor, yet still controlled vacant air that he couldn't touch remotely. I was finally starting to understand what those rebels said when they said we were naturally gifted. The science behind it was more complex than I could grasp.
How did he do that?
Pete asked, turning to Uriah. Uriah crossed his arms, still studying the battle as he responded to Pete's inquiry. I never pegged the kid to be so savvy, Uriah replied. He picked up on it quick. What are you talking about? I pressed. The girls, they move in unison. Their technique is grounded in their BAU link. They have to concentrate their full attention to one sense at a time. Joe picked up on that, so he knocked them off guard with the show of power, then jumped to Ruth's blind side and called for Uni, who could hear him. He scrambled their network, then capitalized by leveling her before she could react. Then he cleared the distance against Ruth, using the wind to finish her off, knowing she couldn't hear it with Uni already taken out.
The kids act so immature. You'd never peg him as such a quick study. I guess Max and Jade were right. These guys may be young, but they are beyond their years when it comes to fighting,
Pete added, smiling. Yeah, this is going to be interesting, Sean added.
Joe, you cheater!
Uni fired, picking herself up off the ground.
Uni, focus!
Ruth replied, fighting to her feet. Uni nodded in an obedient manner. Joe had gained confidence from his last attack. He leaped from foot to foot in anticipation. Swift! The girls powered up and shot back into formation.
Uni, I told you! You're too obvious in your movement! It exposed our senses!
Ruth shot.
We're going to have to alternate and switch. He has our pattern scouted.
Uni nodded apologetically.
Sorry, Ruth,
she replied. Ruth turned to her coldly. Don't be sorry, you. Be better, she ordered, powering up. Uni's eyes glazed at the sound of Ruth's words. Joe's body charged up once again. Joe sent fireballs at the girls as they dodged. Joe's aim was to knock them off balance. He was looking for an opening like the last, but the girls weren't going to make it easy. Block! Uni appeared right in front of him, with a punch that exploded off Joe's high block, startling him. Spin, spin! Uni spun like a top, creating a tornado that knocked Joe off balance. She used the tornado as a shield. The vortex pulled debris from the surface that crashed against Joe's body. Blocked! She struck from the cover of the tornado as Joe maneuvered and blocked it. That's not working anymore, Uni, Joe replied. You're going to have to find something new. Uni giggled loudly at the sound of his words. Oh yeah? She shot. Block! She struck again with a front kick. Swipe! Leap! She went into a sweep as Joe leaped away from her, gaining ground. Hey, Joe! Uni replied. Joe turned, looking frantically for her. Joe, look out! Zek yelled. As he spoke, Uni appeared, holding a shotgun-like cannon aimed at Joe from point-blank range. Boom! Joe covered just as Uni pulled the trigger. The shot exploded off his block, sending him hurtling toward the ground below. He bounced off the ground and soared into a nearby wall. It stirred for a second as Uni laughed hysterically. Joe fought to his feet, infuriated, yelling at the girl. No fair, Uni, he accused, knocking debris off his armor. I didn't know we were using weapons. Uni giggled, hiding in the tornado, as it continued to tear the arena up, headed for Joe. Shut up, Zek, Joe shot. She caught me off guard and she cheated. Zek shot to his side, using Flash Step, pulling him to his feet. It's not cheating, stupid! She never said she wasn't using it! Zek screamed from across the arena. Joe stretched, trying to ease his pain. His brow was split, and blood dripped out of his ear canal as he leaned over, wincing. It is cheating, Joe replied. We never use weapons. Flash! Zek shot to his side, helping him steady himself. He dusted him off aggressively as Joe dismissed his assistants, shoving him away.
That's what I tried to tell you last night. This is not like our training with Uni,
Zek replied.
She's not our friend.
Joe looked startled by Zek's words.
It's Uni,
Joe shot, visibly confused by his brother's words. Zek placed his hand on the boy's shoulder sympathetically.
Look, I'm not saying she's not normally our friend, Joe. I'm saying here she's trying to help her Legion, just like we're trying to help ours. That's why she used her weapon, because she noticed you weren't using yours. She used our friendship against you,
Zek replied. Joe nodded angrily.
Well, if she wants to use weapons, it's her funeral,
Joe replied, pulling a beautiful white whip from his side, with a pearl white handle and gold trim. Pop! He flicked it, causing a thunder-like crack to echo throughout the stadium. Do you guys feel that? I asked, turning to Eve. She nodded with a telling smile.
Yeah, his faith power has almost doubled just from pulling his weapon from its holster,
Eve replied.
Well, faith energy is the power of belief. It seems Joe has more confidence in God's power when he has that whip in his hand.
Sam chuckled proudly, staring at the boy.
What?
Pete asked, turning to him. Oh, nothing, Sam added. It's just, I've sparred with him using that thing. It amplifies his elemental control to a crazy level. It just makes sense why he's so confident with it. What do you mean? I pressed. All I know is that little girl better be careful about amplifying that tornado, he responded. That whip, Joe has the power to. Well, just watch. As he spoke, Joe powered up once again. This time his whip was covered in flames as well. Flash! He shot into the air, using his blazing speed to cut the distance between the two. He appeared just in front of Uni's tornado. Whip! Lash! Joe used his whip, lashing the wind. The wind vibrated violently, then returned to normal.
Thanks, Uni,
Joe replied, landing on top of the tornado. Whoosh! Joe landed on the tornado, setting it ablaze as soon as he touched it. Uni appeared standing downwind.
Joe!
She shot angrily.
So that's what you meant,
Eve added.
He can overpower people's elements.
Sam nodded, affirming her words. Click! Boom! Click! Boom! Uni unloaded shots at the attacking tornado. Shells and smoke popped out of her huge gun as she let out shot after shot, aiming at faint shadows of the boy. Bounce, flash, bounce, flash! She bounced around the arena as Joe rode the tornado like a bull. Crash, dodge, crash, dodge! He rammed into different parts of the arena, engulfing everything he hit into flames. She dove for safety, narrowly dodging his attack.
Uni, come on,
Ruth added.
Since you are incapable of doing this on your own, merge with me again. No, I can do it,
Uni fired back.
Uni, get over here,
Ruth fired forcefully. Uni sulked, embarrassed by her sister's outburst before relenting with a sigh. Flash! She shot to Ruth's side, once again becoming a light outline of herself along with Ruth.
Joe, be careful. They're too fast for that tornado. It's too hard and has too many blind spots. Let it go,
Zek warned. Joe nodded in agreement. Whoosh! Vanish! The tornado and flames dissipated as he dropped through to the ground.
Okay, Joe, stay on your guard,
Zek replied. As Zek spoke, Ruth chuckled. She placed her palms over her head in the shape of a triangle as her eyes lit up.
Element Delta and Beta, Wind and Water Command, Ice Mirror Drones,
Ruth shot. As she spoke, mirrors appeared in different places all over the stadium. As they did, they slowly morphed until they took on the form of bulky ice drones. There were hundreds of them, and they had Joe surrounded.
You want me to help out? Zek pressed. They can't use their elements because of your whip, so they're trying to find another way to trick you. I know, but the last time we fought, you kept getting in my way, Joe shot back. I can do better by myself.
Zek nodded as the drones surrounded Joe.
Don't forget about Uni and Ruth,
Zek continued.
They are only using these drones to keep you occupied. If they use their dematerialization technique, they can still appear using their fighting style. It's going to be harder to fight them and the drones, so focus on the drones and I'll help when I can with Ruth and Uni. No, Zek, I don't need your help,
Joe fired stubbornly.
You wouldn't need me for something like this.
Zek sighed, exhausted by Joe's immaturity.
I'm also more powerful than you are, Zek shot. I'm a Dom.
Joe stared at him, offended.
Doms aren't better than elementals. Look, Tim, Eve, and Sam are the two of the strongest on our team, and they're Ls,
Joe shot back.
And both Eve and Sam beat Doms.
I looked at Sam as he spoke. He stared out at the battlefield with a concerned look on his face as the two brothers bickered back and forth.
I'm not saying Doms are automatically better than Ls,
Zek replied angrily.
I'm more experienced than you are. I've been in more fights, so my body has gotten stronger and stronger over the years, and it's because I'm a Dom.
Joe turned to him angrily, protesting his words.
We're the same,
Joe shot.
You're not better than me. I'm going to show you. You wouldn't have to use your weapon, and just to show you I'm just as good as you, I'm not going to use mine.
Zek threw his hands in the air in frustration as Joe returned his whip to its holster.
Joe, you are the stupidest brother in the world,
Zek shot.
You're stupid,
Joe shot back.
Joe, look out,
Sai shot, catching everyone's attention. As Joe and Zek were in the middle of their spat, one of the drones attacked. Joe erupted in flames, engulfing the drone as several more of them attacked. Block! Joe blocked one, pivoting around it. Explode! He caught the drone with a back kick, exploding it on contact. Flash! He shot past a group of them, aiming for one that sat alone. Explode! He mimicked my kick from the Hannock simulation, using a front drop kick to explode it on contact. He ricocheted off it, using the momentum of the bounce to leap high in the air.
Element Gamma and Epsilon, Fire and Earth Command, Lava Pellets,
he commanded as rock exploded from beneath him. Pepper, pepper, pepper! The mini meteor shots rained down on the drones, exploding them on contact.
Now, Uni!
Ruth screamed. As she spoke, she and her sister appeared, hovering above Joe. Kick, block, crush! Uni flipped forward with a swinging razor kick that collided with Joe's high guard. Her kick was so hard, it shattered Joe's forearm pad. Before Joe could block, Ruth appeared almost as if it was from another dimension in the same spot as her sister. Wham! He wasn't fast enough to block. They had him. I cringed as Ruth floored Joe with a left hook that sent him spiraling to the ground. Boom! The ground exploded on contact. Is this right? I asked, turning to Jacob. Should we try to talk some sense into him? Jacob shook his head. His response was not one I was expecting. I turned to him with an inquisitive stare as he continued. As childish as it came about, this actually may be the best strategy, he continued. The twins are terrible together, but on their own they're pretty formidable fighters. It makes more sense for one of them to stay back and observe the battle. It allows Zek to conserve energy. Besides, I think that Ruth girl is holding back. She's conserving her energy. She knows she's probably going to have to fight Zek with little help from her sister. As vacant as I could be at times, even I noticed that Uni was the one mostly on the offensive, with Ruth stepping in every now and then to capitalize. Joe exploded with power, but before he could blink, the drones were on him again. Swing, crash! A drone took a swing at Joe as he barrel rolled into a group of drones. One of the drones exploded into the ground, narrowly missing him. Sweep kick, sweep kick. Joe swept one of them, then followed the strike with a swinging roundhouse that exploded the drones on contact. They were light work, but they were persistent. As fast as Joe could destroy them, they reformed and attacked again.
Element Alpha, Light Command, Electric Shock!
Joe let out. Shock! Boom, boom, boom! Joe exploded with a punch, sending an electric shock that cut down a group of the drones.
Gotcha!
Uni poked, appearing right in front of Joe. Joe ignored Uni's blow. Uni dematerialized before making contact. Block! Kaboom! Joe blocked Ruth's blow, using its momentum to finish the both off with twin drop kicks. The blows sent the girls flying in the opposite directions, crashing into a nearby pillar. Good job, Joe, I replied. That kid is a little genius, man, Sean replied. I've seen countless rogues taken apart by Ruth and Uni, but this kid is on his game. He's already deciphered their fighting style, and it's still pretty early in the fight. Yeah, you wouldn't expect it, but the little pain in the butt is actually pretty smart, Eve poked. What is everyone talking about? Sam cut in. I turned to Sam, shaking my head. He noticed one of the keys to their technique, I replied. They make themselves known to catch his attention, but that blow is generally a decoy, either to absorb his block or throw him off balance. He found a tell in Uni's attack. He knew she was using dematerialization. He ignored the blow and focused on Ruth. That allowed him to attack when she made herself visible. I shook my head. Joe was impressive. Sam smiled proudly. The fight was entertaining. They were going blow for blow, and I couldn't get enough. For once, we were watching two highly trained prospects going at it. Just watching them made me wonder how good the rest of us would be once we grasped the technical ability to go along with our massive natural power. Joe bounded from foot to foot, waiting for another attack. I was as impatient as he was to see the depth of the true art. I was almost salivating. Ruth, are you okay? Uni asked. Ruth lay lifeless, buried under rubble from the pillar she crashed into. Uni stared at Joe angrily. What did you do to my sister, Joe? Uni fired. Joe smiled before laughing out loud. I just made things even, at least for a couple of minutes, Joe shot. Joe, what did you do to my sister? Uni repeated. Boom! Uni's power skyrocketed with her anger as light exploded, shooting like a laser from her body high in the air. I covered my eyes. The light was so bright we could barely see her. What did he do? I asked, turning to Pete. He smiled, turning to me, eager to explain. I don't know for sure, but I think I might have an idea, Pete replied. Do you remember that night when you guys came to find me right before my trial? I nodded, anxiously waiting for his reply. Yeah? Well, he was able to help me with my bots, Pete continued. He has the power to displace souls. He what? Sam asked, turning to Pete, thrown. When I originally tried to energize my bots, I couldn't disperse myself accurately. I tried for hours, but I couldn't get the algorithm right, Pete continued, explaining. Joe helped me figure it out. He revealed he had the power to literally pull a soul from its vessel for a short period of time. Using his ability, I was able to see how much power I needed for each bot. It helped me disperse my energy properly. Without him, I would have never mastered the technique. So, you think that's what Joe did to Ruth? Sean asked, turning to Pete. Well, look at Joe's hand, Pete replied. I nodded, agreeing with his words, noticing for the first time that Joe wasn't wearing his gloves.
My guess is the little sneak just came across this technique and has been keeping it under wraps the entire time. When he used the technique on me, he removed his gloves. He probably hasn't perfected the technique, so he still has to have direct contact with his skin to properly use it, he continued.
These kids are ridiculous, Eve shot.
I know,
Beth added.
Their control of their powers are so seamless. Whether it's anger or sadness, they channel their faith energy perfectly.
I nodded, staring forward, nervous at what her sudden show of power meant for Joe.
Joe, you might want to pull out your whip now,
Uni warned as the light around her dissipated. Her hair blew in a silhouette. When the light and smoke finally cleared, she was standing with her gigantic gun pointed at Joe.
Joe,
Zek replied urgently.
Move! Now!
Pow! Uni fired a shot that Joe narrowly dodged. It eviscerated everything around him.
Pull out your whip, Joe!
Zek shot. Boom! Pow! Boom! Joe ricocheted from spot to spot as Uni let out shots, nearly missing him and destroying everything the shot hit.
No!
Joe fired stubbornly.
She can't beat me! Joe, pull out your stinking whip, you fog crock!
Zek shot.
You shut up, Zek!
Joe fired back.
I'm going to kick her butt. I have a plan. Watch!
Flip! Joe leaped high in the air.
Element Delta, Wind Command, Slicing Cipher,
Joe replied. Joe used the wind to propel him forward. He flipped forward over and over until he resembled a human spinning firecracker. The sound was deafening.
Joe, that's not going to work,
Zek shot. Boom! Uni unloaded shots at the boy as he moved from side to side, dodging each shot. Uni reloaded her cannon gun as Joe approached.
Element Epsilon, Earth Command, Capchi Pillar,
Uni replied, leaping backward just in time. Kaboom! Joe exploded off the pillar in a thunderous collision. As he did, Uni leaped high in the air. She hit a button on the side of the barrel of her shotgun, causing the barrel to narrow.
Okay, try dodging this,
she shot. The gun instantly changed into a machine gun, firing rapid shots at the dust cloud where Joe had collided with the pillar.
No, you dodge this!
Joe shot, catching everyone's attention. He was still spinning. He appeared just behind her head. He let out as he leveled her with an axe kick.
Ah!
She exclaimed as his foot collided with her high block, sending her hurtling toward the ground. Kaboom! She exploded against the ground as Joe slowly stopped rotating. From the look in his eyes, the blow had taken as much out of him as her.
I told you, you can't use that stupid move,
Zek warned.
It gets you too dizzy to finish every time. It's so stupid to do in the middle of a fight, dum-dum. Shut up,
Joe managed to get out dizzily, trying to find his words.
Hooah!
He puked before he could finish his sentence, causing the audience to draw back, groaning in disgust.
Gross,
Eve replied, turning away.
He may be a genius, but still, he's extremely immature.
I shook my head, agreeing with her words sorrowfully.
It was a great move, but it does as much damage to him as it does to his opponent,
Pete added.
No doubt the move wasn't worth the risk. Not only did he not make flush contact, but the effects of his soul touch trait is bound to wear off any minute now. Joe, hurry and finish off Uni before Ruth gets back to her body,
Zek shot. Joe slowly returned to the ground with a slight thud, falling to his hands and knees, puking his guts out.
Yeah, I know,
Joe replied, spitting, disgusted. The vomit vanished as quickly as it came from his mouth. It was eerie to watch. It looked like one of those late 90s vacuum commercials. Toss! Uni tossed a boulder off her as she struggled to her feet. Once she made it to her feet, she quickly aimed her weapon. Boom! She fired a grenade, then followed it with rapid shots, as Joe once again went on the defensive, dodging and ducking behind cover. He leaped behind a pillar as Uni peppered one side of it. Joe covered as chunks of debris flew wildly all over the place.
Joe, she's just trying to buy time,
Zack shot.
Hurry and finish her off before Ruth comes too.
Uni upped the shots as Joe continued to cower.
I can't find her,
Joe replied, covering.
I can't look long enough to get a good look. Well, look using my visual network. Use me,
Zack begged.
No, I don't need you, Zack,
Joe responded stubbornly. Zack placed his hands on his hips, staring at Joe with frustration written all over his face.
Yes, you do,
Zack fired.
It's obvious you do.
I shook my head, unable to avoid the similarity between the relationships they had with the one I had with Jacob. Everyone stared at Joe, annoyed, but I eerily could understand what he was going through. It was hard to swallow your pride when you know the effects of someone else's action will become a constant theme in your life. And at least Jacob was older than me. Zack and Joe were the same age. It had to make things even harder.
Joe, stop being a brat,
Sai shot.
Just let your brother help you. Yeah, we're a team,
Danny added.
That's what we're here for.
Their words seemed to spark something in Joe. I felt his faith powers spike at the sound of their words.
I don't need my weapon and I don't need Zack. I can win on my own,
he replied, leaping from cover.
Ping pow, ping pow.
Joe walked through peppering shot that exploded off his body. He stared unflinching, not even wincing as his eyes lit up, staring at Zack. I could tell from his posture he was doing recon. He continued to take shots as he devised a counter-strike.
Sorry, Uni, but I have to end this before Ruth gets back,
Joe shot. Quick! Drop! Joe drilled into the ground like a hedgehog. We all stood in awe as several separate paths formed, heading toward Uni underground. Uni fired quick shots at each path as they continued toward her.
Element Alpha, Light Command, Solar Mirage,
Joe commanded underground. Flare! As he spoke, a light flare erupted, causing Uni to cover her eyes. I watched in awe of this kid's command. The resolve it took to take that type of punishment and still counter such an effective counter-strike. I couldn't have been more impressed by Joe. A wind exploded from underground as one path reached Uni. She blocked, covering as the wind collided against her block. Whoosh! Another wind exploded from underground right behind her. Ah! She let out as it collided into her back, sending her flying in the air. The wind exploded from underneath the ground in succession, like missiles. Uni let out blood-curdling groans as the shots collided, battering her.
See you later, Uni,
Joe replied, grimacing in pain. Boom! He was the final path to explode from the ground, flying high in the air to meet her. Kaboom! Ah! Joe held a dense amount of light energy as he soared into the sky. He flipped backwards, holding the dense light in his hand before sending it like a lightning shot. It burst, exploding on contact, as Uni let out one last heart-stopping yelp. Electricity shot through her body like a wave, causing her to convulse and jolt as the shot electrocuted the life out of her. Sword! Kaboom! As the dust settled, Uni's lifeless body fell to the ground, landing with a thud. As it did, Joe landed in a three-point stance, holding himself up with one arm. His other arm hung lifelessly. It looked like his armor was the only thing keeping it attached. He was victorious, but it was bought with a sacrifice. His right arm was useless. Those shots at the beginning of the exchange had done serious damage. Zek smiled, taking a deep breath. "All right, Joe!" Sam shot. Uni wasn't moving. She lay lifeless as Joe fell to his butt, exhausted.
"Good thing you got her," Sai fired. "I would have hated for us to lose over something so stupid." "Yeah, the kid was amazingly thick-headed, but he can definitely fight," Pete added. "And lucky for us."
As they spoke, MedCorps rushed into the stadium, attending to Uni. As quickly as they arrived, they disappeared with Uni's lifeless body. I stared over at Ruth's lifeless body.
"So, since they fought together, does that mean Ruth is out as well?"
Eve asked, turning to Jade. Jade shook his head immediately.
"While it is true that the council gave them consent to battle together because of their tribe's fighting style, the rules don't change," he explained.
I watched Joe slowly make it to his feet. It was only a matter of time before she came to, and as it stood, she wasn't going to be happy. Flash! Zek shot to Joe's side, catching him as he dropped to a knee, exhausted.
"All right, Joe, you proved your point,"
Zek replied, helping him to his feet.
"It was stupid, but you proved your point."
Joe fought to his feet, inadvertently falling into Zek.
"I'm not done yet,"
he replied stubbornly, balancing himself as Zek tried to steady the small boy. Ruth sat up groggily, fighting to her feet. Joe's arm hung battered. He turned to the girl, still refusing to quit. Zek stepped in front of him in a protective manner. Ruth surveyed the layout, searching for Uni. She turned to Zek and Joe angrily. Zek watched her like a hawk. Joe held his arm, wincing, finally showing signs of pain.
"She's in the hospital. Joe beat her,"
Zek explained, shielding Joe. Ruth chuckled, surprising everyone.
"She's such an embarrassment,"
Ruth replied. Joe stared at her angrily.
"That's your sister,"
Joe replied, offended.
"She tried her best and she was hard to beat."
Ruth dusted herself off. She had the same emotionless look on her face from the time she stepped in the arena. A lot of the people in the Heaven Realm were robotic, but she brought a new face to the word. She had a vague, arrogant look that put her in her own stratosphere of vanity.
"Yeah, I can tell you cared,"
she replied.
"I'm sure you hugged her all the way to the hospital, Joe."
The boy stared away, guilt-ridden.
"They were fighting. The point was for him to win, but Uni fought admirably. You were her legion mate and her sister. You suck,"
Zek shot.
"She may not be as good as you are because she's a lot younger. You're supposed to help her, not put her down all the time like you do."
She smiled, unfazed by his comment.
"She's my sister," she continued. "How I choose to talk about her is my business, not yours."
Joe brushed Zek aside angrily.
"Well, she's my friend, Ruth. Just because you came of age doesn't mean you have to treat her like she's an annoying kid. We care about her. How you choose to talk about her is my business,"
Joe shot. The determination he had to defend a friend was admirable, but he was woefully outmatched. The girl wasn't even flexing, and her faith energy was more than intimidating. She crossed her arms in front of her chest arrogantly.
"So I guess we're at an impasse, Shorty," she mocked.
Joe covered his arm in light, using his faith energy to fix his arm.
"Let's do it,"
Joe shot. Zek shoved him, objecting immediately.
"What are you doing?"
Zek shot.
"You don't have the faith energy to really fix it. You're just numbing it with light energy. We don't have our heaven bodies anymore, dummy." "So what? I'm supposed to sit here and let her talk about uni like that?
Joe shot angrily. Zek became aggressive as he jumped into his brother's face.
No, for once you can let me handle it. Let me help you,
Zek shot.
It's just like on that mission where I had to save you. You always try to do things without me. Just because you hate how powerful I am, it doesn't mean it's my fault. I don't think I'm better than you. I like fighting with you.
His words sent chills through our group. I didn't truly understand Zek's connection to his brother, but his words shined a light on the interworking of what he was going through. Jacob was always so condescending to me that my understanding of a brotherly relationship was tainted. I couldn't understand the point of view of an excelling sibling that hated the disconnection it caused. I thought their relationship was similar to ours, but that wasn't the case. From the look of things, it was completely different.
I know, Zek, I like fighting with you too,
Joe responded sympathetically.
But I got to get better. I want to help you like you always help me. I can't do that if I'm always depending on you. And aside from that...
Whoosh! He quickly engulfed himself in flames as he powered up.
Uni's our best friend, and I hate how she talks to her. I always have,
Joe continued.
Ever since she did that stupid coming-of-age transformation, she's been a bully, and for that I want to punch her lights out. This was never about Uni, and it isn't about us. I always wanted to fight her. I've wanted to fight her for a long time.
Zek jostled, lowering his head in a frustrated manner.
Okay, but I'm tapping in as soon as you need me,
he shot. He backpedaled, signaling to Proctor that he was not intervening. The Proctor nodded before signaling for the battle to continue. Flash! She was fast. As soon as the Proctor signaled for her to begin, she vanished. Block! Joe blocked her shot. Vanish! Just as quickly as he blocked, she vanished, dematerializing through him. She was technically sound and had natural fighting instinct. Her speed was above average, and her timing with the dematerialization technique was flawless. Kick! She caught him with a back kick directly to his injured shoulder, dropping the boy. Joe grunted, flipping forward. He redirected the momentum of his roll to avoid putting weight on his shoulder. She chuckled arrogantly as Joe writhed in pain. He fought to his feet, grimacing from the pain as the girl waited condescendingly.
Keep your nose out of my business, she shot. I love my little sister, but the people we fight don't, and I'm not going to...
She paused, embarrassed the boy's words affected her enough that she felt the need to defend her actions. She shook off the momentary lapse as Joe ignored her, trying to regain his bearings. She knows he didn't fully heal that shoulder. She's going to target it, Sam shot. Yeah, she's good too. I don't even know if he could have beat her without the dislocated shoulder, but fighting like this is going to be an uphill battle, I added.
Joe, dodge, don't block. It opens your shoulder up for attack,
Zek shot. Joe moved his shoulder, trying to numb the pain, but winced as a shooting pain overtook him.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know now,
Joe shot, still in agonizing pain. Flash! Dodge! Joe narrowly dodged as she quickly attacked again. Flash! Dodge! Flash! Dodge! She was a blur. Joe dodged, narrowly maneuvering around one of her strikes. Flash! She dematerialized, charging once again. Flash! He dodged another strike. Ruth quickly dematerialized. She appeared a foot away from him with two small crossbows pointed directly at Joe's shoulder. She let out shots from point-blank range, destroying his shoulder.
Ah!
Joe responded, grimacing, holding his arm.
Joe!
Zek let out. Man, Eve replied in an agitated tone. The pain was written all over his face. She was vicious and calculating. She marched toward the boy slowly. If she had any urgency, the match would have been over. Instead, she was toying with the boy. "Never come into a fight with an exposed weakness," Ruth replied, stalking him. "Not a smart idea, Jojo." Spark! Joe sparked a light flash to blind Ruth as he darted in the opposite direction, still nursing his bad shoulder. Flash! As quickly as he moved, Ruth was blocking his path. "I'm not Uni. Your little kid tricks won't work on me," she replied. Kick! She leaped, spinning into a back kick. Her heel hit the boy square in the chest, knocking the air out of his body. Crash, crash, crash! He flew, flipping through pillars like a bullet before landing on his back in a heap. The exhaustion on his face and pain in his eyes were apparent. A cut opened just above his eye that leaked down his face, giving him a warlike paint covering on half of his face. "Man, that little girl is fierce," Jacob added, shaking his head. "Yeah, well, Joe's fierce too," Sam added, biting his nails nervously. The boy had to do something, and do something quick, because this girl was no joke, and she had her sights on him. Leap! Flash! She flew high in the air, and before I could blink, she was aiming her crossbows at him. Dodge! She littered the ground with gravity-aided shots as the boy narrowly dodged. He dove to safety, leaping behind a pillar. Flash! Grab! Smash! She dematerialized through the pillar like it was invisible, grabbing Joe by his arm and slamming him into a nearby wall shoulder first. She used enough force to knock a chunk out of the wall. "My gosh, come on!" Eve grunted, wincing from watching the impact. "Come on, I don't care what Joe says. Zach needs to step in," Pete added, shaking his head. "Ah!" Joe let out, as you could visually see that breath leave his body as Ruth dropped him like trash. "Joe!" I replied via BAU. Joe grunted, wincing, holding his side. For once, he looked like a kid, as you could see tears streaming from his face as he fought. I locked into his network, and it was going crazy. The pain he was experiencing was unimaginable. His shoulder was badly separated, only held together by a couple tendons that Ruth was ripping to shreds with each attack. Whoosh! He sent a slicing wind that nearly took the girl's lips off. Flash! As quickly as she appeared, Ruth vanished again. Joe collapsed once again. "Yeah, Tim?" he replied, wincing. "Joe, focus on her right shoulder," I replied. "What?" he replied. "Her dematerialization is fast, but she still has a tell," I continued, talking as fast as I could. "I don't need help," Joe managed. His BAU had static throughout because of the pain shooting through his system. "This is just me and you," I replied. "No one can hear us. We'll just say it's one little brother helping another little brother. Us underdogs have to stick together." "Underdog?" he questioned, groaning in pain. "It's an Earth term. It's a word we use to say someone is looked down on or underestimated," I replied. "People look down on you? That doesn't make sense. You're the best," he continued. A part of me was surprised by his words. It went back to what Sam said during our spat before his trials. Maybe I was the only one who looked at myself as an underdog, but regardless, even if I was the only one who thought so, I knew what it was like to be underestimated and shunned. Maybe it was just in my family, but it didn't make it any easier. No, I'm not. I always get overshadowed by my big brother too. And before I got here, my father always trusted my brother to take care of me and make sure I didn't mess things up. I always wanted to prove that I could take care of myself, that I could be trusted. And this is my chance, Joe. I want to show that I can help someone too, I replied, thinking on my toes. I've been watching her. Her right shoulder is her tell. She lowers it when she doubles up her dematerialization or when she performs a double move. It stays up when she goes for a straight attack. I'm pretty sure it's a nervous tick she can't help. So Will you help me by trusting me and do what I say? Everything I said was off the top of my head, but if anyone understood what Joe was going through, it was me. If there was anyone who knew how to get through to him, it would be me. My aim was to make him believe he would be helping me, and not the other way around. His pride wouldn't accept being helped in front of everyone, but this way he could save face, and people would still think he did it on his own.
No problem,
Joe added.
I can help you out.
He rose to his feet with resolve that was far beyond his years. His arm dangled limp. He took a deep breath, wincing in pain.
Well, I guess it's okay to use this, seeing as I'm injured now,
he replied with a grin. Whip-lash! Joe pulled his whip from his side. It cracked, causing thunder to erupt around him.
Finally,
Cy groaned.
Yeah, at least this gives him a chance,
Pete replied, kneeling nervously.
I got one shot at this,
he replied via BAU.
Are you sure, Tim?
I smiled transparently as everyone turned to me.
What?
Eve replied, picking up on my smile instantly. What did I say, Joe? I replied, still speaking in BAU. Trust me. He smiled, shaking his head, looking at the ground.
Okay, I forgot,
Joe replied. Just watch, I replied with a wink as I turned to Eve. She smiled, nodding, rubbing her hands in anticipation. As she did, Ruth took a deep breath, aiming her crossbow at Joe.
Nice weapon,
she replied.
You'll need it.
Ping, ping, ping. She fired shots at him as he dodged. He lashed his whip around his body like a silhouette. He flipped, maneuvering the whip like it was an extension of his body. It whipped around him like a tail, blocking every shot Ruth fired.
Are you serious?
Pete uttered.
What is that thing made of?
More like, what is that kid made of? Sean added, amazed. He's using the wind to deflect the gravity shots with his whip. I've never seen anything like it. Ruth's eyes betrayed her, disclosing her amazement as well.
Ping, ping!
She grunted angrily, raining more shots to no avail. Joe blocked them all as the whip seemed to move like it was a separate entity, blocking every bullet with a simple flick of Joe's wrist. Come on, charge, I thought as Joe baited her. It was genius. I could feel him building his faith energy for an attack as he deflected bullets left and right.
You know why I wanted to fight you?
Joe replied, baiting her.
Because I know why you make fun of Uni so much.
Brrr, ping, ping. She shot at him angrily, once again sending gravity shots in rapid succession. He dodged and repelled the shots with ease. He was seamless in his control of the whip.
You're jealous of her,
Joe continued. She aimed her crossbow at the boy, measuring her next attack before responding to his accusation.
You have no idea what you're talking about, Joe,
she shot angrily, leaping into action.
My sister means everything to me.
She was no longer controlled in her attacks. Her shots were wild and undisciplined. He had gotten to her. He played her like an accordion.
You know she's better than you are,
Joe continued in a virtuoso display of antagonism.
You can feel her getting better and better, and it scares you. I know I could beat you because you're not as smart as she is. You little twerp,
Ruth erupted, shooting toward him.
I told you, I want what's best for my sister.
I was waiting for it, and like clockwork, she moved to double up on her attack. On cue, her shoulder dipped. I nearly jumped out of myself, anticipating Joe's next move. Dodge! Joe dodged just as she dematerialized. Stick with the plan, Joe, I urged impatiently, leaning forward. Flash! She appeared just as Joe dodged, perfectly timing his counter-strike.
Gotcha!
He yelled, causing her eyelids to touch to the top of her head.
How?
She uttered in disbelief.
That's my business,
he replied with a smile.
Like you said, don't ever come into a fight with a weakness, Ruthie.
Wham! He caught her with a devastating sidekick that sent her flying in the opposite direction.
Game over!
He yelled, cocking his whip. Whip, lash, shock! He released his whip, wrapping it around her, stopping her in midair as it lassoed around her body. She fought to free herself as he released a steady flow of the built-up light energy.
And this is for talking about my best friend,
he replied, pulling her toward him with a grimacing look on his face. Oh, wham! I could see every tendon in his arm popping as he threw all he had into his throw. He swung her like a tetherball into a nearby wall with earth-shattering force.
That is unreal. This kid... How?
Eve replied, expressing complete astonishment. She wasn't the only one. Every person in the stadium looked on in awe. Joe had taken out two of the top prospects in the entire Light Guard trials single-handedly. Zek smiled, shaking his head, playfully annoyed. Ruth rolled over lifelessly as the proctor called the match. Joe collapsed, exhausted, dropping his whip in the process.
I told you I had this,
he replied exhaustedly, stretching as he hit the ground. I shook my head, blown away. So, what's next? Sam replied, shaking his head. Chapter 28. Brother from Another.
You were terrible today, brother, but at least you won,
Zek replied, helping Joe to his feet as Ruth was taken care of. I couldn't have said better myself, said a voice from right behind Zek. It was Kel. The next match had begun before Joe or Zek could react. Kel appeared with an axe in the shape of a guitar strapped across his back. His cowboy hat hung over his face as he reached back, grasping it. Swing, flash! Zek seemed to vanish as he flashed, taking Joe across the arena with him.
Now it's my turn,
Zek shot, rising to his feet. Oh, you're right. It is your turn, Kel continued, holding the guitar in front of himself. But you're talking like your brother's day is done. Me? I'm not so sure. He strummed his guitar axe as a low-pitched hum emanated from it. The sound started out calm and soothing before screeching higher. It became repetitive as we all covered our ears in annoyance. As he did, Joe's eyes went vacant. The small boy exploded in light seconds later. His body rose, covered in a weird bright green light that seemed to seep into him. There's some anger there. I reckon he still has something to prove, he shot, strumming intensely as he marched toward the boys. What's going on? I asked, turning to Sean. Joe's body twitched wildly, floating high in the air.
Joe!
Zek shot. He turned to Kel with an angry stare.
Let my brother go!
Zek shot. That's no fun, Kel mocked. Why don't you make me? Zek's eyes narrowed as he turned toward him. Flash, whip, lash! As Zek shot toward Kel, Joe's whip lashed before him, destroying the terrain. The momentum of the strike sent Zek flying in the opposite direction. He evened out his trajectory, landing in a three-point stance. He stared at Joe as he descended, blocking his path to Kel.
Joe, what are you doing?
Zek shot.
It's not me, Zek,
Joe shot back.
I can't control my body. He did something to me.
What's happening? Sam asked, turning to Sean. Every person in our legion turned to him, waiting for an explanation. That green light is Breaker. It taps into the emotions of the person he's against and controls them, he replied. This thing, it can just climb into his opponent? Sam replied. Sean shook his head. No, there has to be strong emotion. Breaker takes that emotion and amplifies it. The technique needs conflict or resentment, and I mean serious deep-seated issues. Deep-seated issues like the issues Joe and Zach have been letting brew, Sean continued.
So it was a setup from the beginning. They chose the girls to go first because they knew we would pit them against the twins. Now they're taking advantage of the animosity between them,
Pete shot. Well, not really, Sean responded. I mean, you have to admit, there was a pretty good chance you guys would be left with at least 2 people in your legion with deep-seated resentment. It's only natural. You guys are a group of friends with a lot of unmapped bonds. You guys were thrown together with no time to deal with your issues. It's one of the reasons the council was so impressed with you guys. That being said, the resentment for someone or something was bound to be there, no matter who was left. It was the very reason Kel was selected to join our legion. We wanted to take advantage of your immaturity and lack of preparation. He was the perfect tool. It was an accurate assumption for them to make. He was right. We had so much dysfunction and underlying issues in our legion. Pete and Sam, me and Jacob, me and Eve, me and Cy and Eve, even Beth, Uriah and Jacob. The millions of scenarios played out in my head. One of those relationships was bound to become combustible. So how do you overcome it? I shot, turning to Sean, annoyed. He shrugged his shoulders apologetically. I've seen Kel use that technique plenty of times. Not once has Breaker been dispelled. It's hard to fight and listen to therapy at the same time. An open mind is usually a result of the source of the resentment being destroyed, Sean responded. So you're saying the key is to counteract the resentment between Joe and Zach? I shot.
It sounds easy enough, Pete interjected via BAU. But resentment is resentment for a reason. Think about the issues you have with Jacob. Do you think someone could talk that resentment out of you? Do you think the frustration, angst, and annoyance can be easily cast aside with a couple minutes of talk? We're talking years of feeling a certain way and constantly feeding it. You've essentially created a secret part of yourself that only you can treat.
His words held so much validity. It was scary to consider the result of Kel pushing those nuclear buttons. What about Joe? I questioned. What do you mean? Sam replied. I mean, could Joe fight Breaker? If he fought hard enough, it's possible to overcome Kel's influence, am I right? I pressed. Like I said, I've never seen anyone break free, he responded with a shrug. Breaker not only inhabits the body, it subconsciously takes control of the target's impulses and hormones. What does that mean? Sam broke in.
It means even though Joe is coherent, he isn't consciously in control of his body until he controls his anger toward his brother, Pete responded. Breaker acts like a hacker program. It gets in and takes control. What am I supposed to do? Zach fired.
What do you mean? Jacob shot. You're supposed to fight.
I'm not going to fight my brother,
Zach shot. Yes, you are. Whether you like it or not, you're going to fight. Only difference is whether or not you're going to let him beat the crap out of you or not, Jacob shot back. That's not the worst part, Zach, Sean added. Joe's going to be your brother with a portion of Kel's faith energy. That power will make him more powerful than he is usually.
It doesn't matter. He's still not as strong as me,
Zach shot out loud, before grimacing as Joe's eyes locked onto him angrily. Boom! Joe's body exploded with power, shocking everyone. If his power was intimidating before, it only became colder after Zach's words. It was obvious things escalated. Zach's cocky attitude, mixed with Joe's natural competitive drive, was going to be a toxic relationship to diffuse.
What did you say, Zach?
Joe blasted. Zach, don't provoke your brother, Sean shot. It makes Kel's power over your brother stronger. It feeds off the animosity between the two of you.
I didn't mean to,
Zach shot. Well, that did it, Kel smirked. I think we're ready to begin.
What?
Zek replied. Lash! Joe lashed his whip out as Zek dodged backwards.
Joe?
Zek replied, staring across the arena. Joe flexed as his body and his voice seemed to be at odds. His eyes, posture, and every other part of him seemed angry and ready for battle, but his voice was apologetic and sincere as he spoke.
I told you it wasn't me, Zek!
Joe shot.
Stop pissing me off! It makes my body more angry and powerful!
Lash, lash, boom, lash, crash, boom! Joe continued to lash, destroying the scenery around Zek as he dodged for his life.
Seriously, Joe?
Zek shot.
If you hit me, I'm going to kick your butt, Joe!
Zek, it's not Joe, I shot. Haven't you been listening?
Yes, I have been listening,
Zek replied, still dodging for his life.
You said this guy is able to control him because Joe is mad at me.
Zek, Eve explained, it's not that simple.
Yes, it is. It's real simple. If he's in control of his anger, then that makes it him. If he wasn't so jealous of me, this guy wouldn't be able to control him. So as far as I am concerned, it's him,
Zek replied.
I've been nothing but a good brother to him. He has no reason to be mad at me. He's the one who has been a terrible brother lately. I'm the one who should be mad. What? I've been a terrible brother?
Joe shot.
You've been the one ducking out, training with Tim and Jacob like you're some special deal.
Joe exploded with power once again. I rolled my eyes in frustration. It was going to be a long night. Stop provoking your brother, Zek, Jacob shot angrily.
No!
Zek shot.
He wants to go there. Let's go there. I'm sick of him being jealous of everything I do. All I wanted to be was a good brother to him.
Everyone paused, starting to realize this was a deeper issue than we previously anticipated. Zek wasn't going to back down, and as long as he provoked Joe, things were only going to get worse. This was going to be a fierce fight if one of the two didn't peel back, and fast. Kel strummed his guitar louder like a Pied Piper as Joe continued to get more powerful with every comment.
A good brother! A good brother! No, a good brother would have let me come too. They wouldn't try to hog all the training for themselves and leave me by myself. You're a terrible brother,
Joe shot.
Is this Joe and Zek, or is Kel doing this?
Eve asked, turning to Sean. I don't think so, Sean replied. He's never come clean about it, but I'm pretty sure that guitar has a dual ability. It not only controls the body of the person, he taps into it. I think it also controls the emotions of the two combatants. I turned to Sean, flabbergasted. So you're saying he has the power to control animosity and twist the anger inside his opponent as well? I shot. I'm pretty sure he can, Sean shot. He's never come clean, but I've been in too many battles alongside him. I've noticed intricacies he's fought hard to hide.
Are you serious? Pete added. Man, that's going to be a monster to conquer. It's the perfect light art. It's almost unbreakable.
I nodded in agreement.
So you're saying it's not Zek?
Sai added. I'm saying he's fueling Zek, Sean replied.
Man, this is going to suck,
I spouted in frustration. It had been a while since I felt this mentally stumped by a situation. Zek and Joe circled with each other, as it looked like Zek was becoming more willing to fight with each second. Dun, dun, bum! Kel wailed on his guitar, catching everyone's attention. I could feel Joe's power and Zek's temper amplifying with every strum.
What can we do?
Eve replied. Well, Kel was always extremely protective of his technique. I've tried for years to get a beat on it, but for the most part, he only used it while we were in the teeth of battle. I've never seen him use it in a battle where we were comfortable enough for me to carefully analyze it, Sean shot.
But in all the years you fought with him, you had to have picked up something,
Pete pressed.
Yeah,
Anything will be useful, I seconded. Sean paused for a second, racking his brain. Well, I did pick up a consistency with the effect he has on the second guy, Sean continued. You mean Zach, I replied. Well, I realized that lower B flat is the key, he continued. So, my guess, do you guys have a percept vert on this squad? Yeah, we do. Uriah, Jacob added. Well, if he can link up with Zach, it's a shot in the dark, but if he can shut down Zach's hearing, then maybe he can break the control, I shot. Jacob nodded, immediately signaling and transmitting the plan to Uriah. Uriah gave an affirming nod as he turned to Zach. Zach, you're going to have to work with me. I'm going to knock out your hearing, Uriah explained. No, you're not, Zach shot. How am I going to win if you take out my hearing? You're being controlled, Zach, Uriah shot. The guitar isn't only controlling your brother, it's controlling you too. Zach shook his head stubbornly. No, it's not, Zach shot. I'm starting to realize my brother is selfish, that's all. Whip! Joe was beyond angry as his eyes lit up at the sound of Zach's words. He grimaced, reeling back, unleashing a thunderous whip toward Zach, who narrowly dodged. Lash! Kaboom! As powerful as Joe was with his whip before, this new power was on another level. It eviscerated the terrain, with every blow creating craters and sending flying debris everywhere. Okay, Zach shot, narrowing his gaze. Flash! Block! Kaput! Zach flash-stepped, attacking Joe with a Superman punch in point-blank range. Joe narrowly dodged. Grabbing Zach's wrist, he flipped backwards and exploded with a dropkick to Zach's chest. Kaboom! Zach went through 3 pillars, flipping and flopping like a rag doll before crashing into a nearby wall. Man, Sam replied, that's not even Joe's fighting style. The way he anticipated that blow, it's like he's a totally new fighter. Yeah, it's a mixture between Kel's and his. It's a side effect. When Joe and Kel meld, they become 2 minds simultaneously, Sean explained. So it's like with Uni and Ruth, Eve shot. No, not really, Sean retorted. Ruth and Uni are 2 people who trained to fight as one, but they still had human tendencies. They were 2 people concentrating on 2 separate means of attack. What Kel does is one of the reasons our Legion was so heralded. What do you mean? I pressed. Kel has the ability to create a collective conscious by using himself as a catalyst, he explained. Kel creates a network where his fighting memories are like a computer cloud database, so when he melds with Joe or anyone else, they picked up his tendencies and techniques or the fighting traits of anyone attached, so when Joe reacts, it's a perfect consensus of what he and Kel would do. So, as you can imagine, the more people attached, the more formidable the squad, and with the elite Legion at our disposal, it made us virtually unstoppable. It gave us natural chemistry. Good thing you guys fought us disbanded, because as a group, we were a completely different beast. We all nodded, finally grasping that we were actually different. Uriah and Pete were technical generals, analyzing and deciphering to come up with strategy. Kel was a different type of general. He was a motivational general that inspired people to work together, maybe not in the conventional sense, but all things considered, there wasn't a better way to get everyone in your unit on the same page. Stop pissing me off, Zach, Joe shot. You're just making me want to lose the little bit of control I have! Flash! Without so much as a gust of wind, Zach was attacking. Blam! Pip, 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 pip! He caught Joe with a square punch that knocked him off balance, and before he could react, Zach hit him with a succession of punches that were so accurate that it was almost as if he knew each block Joe was going to throw before he did. Zach created a spark that instantly transformed into a boulder of ice.
You stop pissing me off!
Zach shot. Wham! He cracked the boulder off Joe's high block, sending him flying to the ground below. Kaboom! Joe landed with a hard explosion as Zach soared high above him. What is Zach doing? Sam shot. I turned to Sam, thrown by his words. He's not in control, I shot in Zach's defense. He may not be in total control, Sam replied, but he has some control. He wants this. Sam, you sound stupid, I replied angrily. They're kids. Besides, it's not like Joe didn't do his share of things to end up in this predicament. Eve turned to us, confused by our spat. You sure you guys aren't under the spell? Eve poked. I ignored her as I turned back to the arena.
Okay,
Joe shot. Kaboom! Joe exploded with power, so much so that he no longer looked like he was covered in flames. He now looked like a flame.
You wanna fight?
Joe continued.
You'll get one!
Flash! Pow! Joe flashed, hitting Zach with a punch to the face that nearly knocked his head off.
Get back here!
Joe shot, lassoing him with his whip and pulling his momentum back toward him. Grip! He palmed Zach's head like it was a basketball. Pip, 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 pip! He wailed on Zach with rapid shots that was so fast that even I could barely follow them. This is getting out of hand, I shot. Rah! Froze! As Joe wailed, Zach exploded with power, sending Joe flying to the ground. Kaboom! Joe landed in a 3-point stance, slowing his momentum.
You know, Joe, it's going to take more than that,
Zach shot.
Yeah, I know, but for once, I got more,
Joe replied with a confident smile. Clash! The two charged each other, going blow for blow.
They're going to regret this when they tear each other apart,
Sai shot.
We've got to do something.
Strong, dong. Kel continued to wail on his guitar from across the arena. Clash, pip, block, The two once again charged each other. Zach leveled Joe with a punch that nearly took his block off. Swing! Joe spun, using his human shuriken technique. Wham, wham, wham! Joe nailed Zach with several flipping front kicks, sending him flying high in the air. Flash! Joe appeared, blocking Zach's ascent. Froze, crash, pow! As Joe charged with a diving stomp, Zach created an ice barrier that crashed into Joe's blow. Before Joe could prepare, Zach shot at him after the exchange, meeting him in the air. I underestimated how powerful Zechariah was, Sean added, shaking his head in amazement. His brother's power has been multiplied exponentially, and this kid is still going blow for blow. You guys are lucky this kid was kept under wraps. He would have been at the Alpha House years ago, he continued.
If he wasn't using that immense power on his brother at the moment, I might be singing a different tune,
Pete broke in.
But at this rate, Joe's anger will continue to grow. Zach can't keep this up for long. Both need to listen to reason and stop this.
What can we do? Eve pressed, turning to Pete. I didn't know what to do. They weren't holding their punches, and we were in a world of trouble. The two were going blow for blow, destroying each other as we watched helplessly. Talking had failed, and there was no way we were going to stop this fight anytime soon. Someone was going to have to step in. Pete stirred for a second before turning to me with a confident smile. What? I replied. You got something? Pete nodded, motioning for me to come closer.
Yeah, I think I got something,
he said, cutting off his BAU to talk to me directly.
How do you get two enemies to work together?
He replied. I shrugged before replying, The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I shot, mapping things in my mind as I spoke. We have to find someone they hate more than each other.
Exactly,
he replied enthusiastically.
In this case, the person is obvious. We just have to guide their anger toward Kel.
No disrespect, Pete, but it's kind of what we've been trying to do for the last couple of minutes, Eve shot.
Yeah, but we've been trying to stop them from going at each other's throat. Kids are stubborn, and the younger they are, the more stubborn they are. You're not going to convince them to stop doing anything without sweetening the pot, but you can curb their motivation, Pete explained.
Okay, explain, Jacob continued.
Well, if the twins want to see who's better, let them compete, just not against one another,
Pete explained. That could work, Jacob added. Trick them into focusing their competition against each other into a competition focused on beating Kel.
Exactly,
Pete continued.
Sam and Tim, this is what we'll do.
It took a second for him to explain it to us. I tried to take it in as fast as I could. Zach and Joe continued to battle in the arena.
Thruck! Boom! Tim! Sam! Now!
Pete ordered urgently. I nodded towards Sam, signaling I was ready. Sam, what are you talking about? I shot coyly. It's not a good thing that Joe is winning. Zach could beat Kel just as easily. Zach powered up before stopping in his tracks at the sound of my words.
Well, what about you?
Sam added, winking.
When Zach was winning, you said the same thing.
Joe could also easily beat Kel. Joe stopped, turning toward us. I winked back at Sam as we continued. Well, I think Zach would be better, but we won't be able to see because this isn't a real fight between the two. So who cares who wins this one? I wish they could fight Kel instead, I continued.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Joe's injured and being powered by Kel, so it's not a true fight. But if one of these guys could overcome Kel's mind control and beat him, man, then we'd see a real fight, Sam continued, improvising beautifully. I bet Zach could break that mind control easily if Joe wasn't fighting him. He's the smart one, I continued.
Yeah, well, Joe has stronger will. I guarantee he would have overcome this thing if Zach wasn't distracting him,
Sam shot back, giving the boys the final nudge.
Bun, bun.
Kel strummed his guitar harder, trying to regain control, but it wasn't working anymore. He looked utterly flabbergasted as Zach and Joe turned their gaze to him.
Work,
Sean added.
Keep it up, you guys,
Pete whispered, nudging me to continue.
Just a little more.
Sam and I turned to each other, pretending to be in a heated exchange as the boys turned their backs to us. Zach isn't distracting him. Zach's trying to be a good brother and work with Joe, I continued. Joe won't let him. Sam smiled mischievously as Joe turned to me angrily before turning to Zach empathetically.
Yeah, well, maybe Joe would work with Zach if he wasn't constantly trying to hog all the glory,
Sam continued.
Hey, don't talk about my brother like that,
Joe cut in angrily.
Yeah, and my brother has let me help him a bunch of times,
Zach seconded. Kel lowered his head in a defeated yet impressed manner as Sam and I winked at him in a provoking manner. Joe and Zach caught a glimpse of our demeanor before showing satisfied grins as Sam and I saluted in their direction. So, you sold me out, huh, Sean? He sighed. I had nothing to do with it, Sean shot. It was all the Selly kid. The kid as smart as Abby. Kel accepted Sean's words with a chuckle as Pete gave a two-finger salute. Well, I'll be, Kel poked. I guess you're smarter than I chose to believe. As he spoke, his gaze quickly switched to a stern stare, lowering his gallon hat over his eyes. His hair blew wildly as static electricity covered his body. Zach and Joe braced themselves as his powers shot through the arena.
Well, you two seem to have a new motivation, and I'm guessing it's me, he continued. The only way to break the hypnotism is to incapacitate the target. It was genius for that kid to go basic. It was oversight of mine, but all the same, whether I have to get you guys to beat each other or if I have to do it myself, a beating is a beating, I reckon. Considering there is two of you, it's only fair that I even the odds, isn't it?
As he spoke, a gorilla-looking creature formed from the static electricity, much like the animals Herschel used in our battle with the children of Loki. "This is Bracken," he shot confidently, standing next to the beast.
Zack, I want to be a good brother or the best brother.
Joe managed.
Don't worry, Joe, I know. Let's just kick this guy's butt and go watch the rest of the trial with Tim and Sam.
He shot, cutting him off. Joe nodded happily as Kel pressed a button, causing blades to extend from his guitar axe.
Let's go!
Zack shot. Flash! Flash! Joe and Zack shot across the arena, clashing weapons with the beast and boy. Joe took on Kel and Zack took on Bracken. Joe reeled in his whip as a katana extended from the other side. Zack wielded a large blade Viking sword. But pop, pop, pit, pop! Zack struck Bracken in the face with the butt of his sword before hitting him with 2 strong hooks. He finished his attack with a back kick and a flying front drop kick. Wham! Bracken slammed into a nearby wall, shattering it. Zack hovered, surveying the layout for Joe and Kel. The two were in a fierce exchange. Clash, bing, clash, bing! Zack jumped into the fray as Kel fended off him and his brother. The boy was an adept fighter. He parried, blocked, and dodged the boys skillfully.
Sit still so we can hit you,
Zack ordered, angrily slicing at the boy. Okay, the boy shot, seizing the moment. Clash! Ooh! He blocked one of Joe's shots before nailing him with a sidekick that slid him across the terrain, sending the boy flipping wildly. As they continued to battle, Bracken slowly reformed.
Zack, that thing is coming back,
Joe warned, covering his stomach, wincing in pain. Clash! Bing, bing, bing! Zack attacked vigorously as Kel continued to dodge. With each shot, his arms flailed from the momentum of his sword hitting Kel's subatomic barrier. Clash! Flash! Ooh! Ooh! Finally, a clashing blow sent Kel sprawling back before Zack flash-stepped, charging with a shoulder block that sent Kel into a nearby wall. Zack! Joe shot. Oof! Ah! Zack winced as his eyes lit up. Bracken ran him through with an ice spear. Zack took a deep breath, falling to his knees. Whoosh! Whip! Pull! Slice! Joe extended his whip, lassoing Bracken, pulling him towards him, slicing his head off in a single motion.
Zack, are you alright?
He replied, shooting to his downed brother's side.
It was a trap,
Zack shot.
Well, he's older than you,
Joe shot.
He's smarter. Can you keep going?
Zack winced before covering his body in ice.
That should be enough to stop the blood from coming out, but it's going to slow me down,
he shot, forcing himself to his feet. Good job, Bracken, Kel shot as Bracken dispersed. I know you're at your limit. Go ahead and rest up. Joe stepped in front of Zack, blocking his path, as Kel absorbed Bracken back into his guitar.
Try it, Kel,
Joe replied. It's been tested, Half-Pint. You ain't nothing without your brother there to cover for you, and from the looks of it, he ain't moving with the same get-up as before. As for you, he shot condescendingly, you can barely stand without my power because of the punishment you took against the girls. Do you really think you're going to beat me with one arm and damn near depleted of light and faith energy, boy? Whip! Joe's whip seemed to have a mind of itself as it wrapped itself around he and Zack like a mother snake protecting its eggs.
Yes!
Joe shot with his eyes lit up.
Don't worry, Zack. I may not be 100%, but I still got your back,
Zack shot, struggling to his feet with his brother's help.
Well, let's just try to make this quick. That ice is going to melt sooner or later, and you're going to lose too much blood to continue,
Joe warned.
Yeah,
Zack replied.
Let's just go. Do you remember the attack we performed on Bayayate?
Yes, Joe shot, turning to Zack. That huge lizard with that blade fin! But how? You can barely move with that wound! I know, Joe. This time we'll have to switch places, Zack gasped, fighting to remain standing, wincing in pain. I don't know, Zack, Joe replied, unsure. I don't know if I can do that. Your ice is denser. I can't make my element that thick. It doesn't work as well. I can create ice, but your thunder is as hard as diamond. It's not going to be the same. Zack placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, causing Joe to meet his grimacing gaze. Listen, Joe, you're 10 times more powerful than you were then. And besides, this guy isn't as big or tough as that me fight we fought. Come on, I know what you can do. You're good enough, Joe. You can do it, he replied, refreezing his wound before dropping to one knee from the pain. We have to hurry. I'm not going to hold up much longer. The more blood I freeze, the bigger the ice shard clogging my blood gets. Joe helped his brother to his feet, patting him on the shoulder with a determined gaze. Okay, let me know when you're ready, Joe replied, turning to Zack. Zack hunkered on Joe's shoulder to hold himself up. Kel pulled his hat over his eyes, twirling his axe before slamming it into the ground, creating a large static bulb. The bulb grew arms and formed into a large spider-like creature made of electricity. Let's go, Grand Prix, Kel commanded, rising high in the air on the back of the beast. Why are his subatomic beasts so large? I replied, turning to Jade. It's a credit to the wielder. Subatomic beasts are just the manifestation of the faith energy the wielding remnant has. The beasts are random genetic code that the remnant creates. The beast's shape and size are not controlled by the remnant, they simply name them. That being said, the larger the subatomic beast, the more concentrated faith energy is. It takes a powerful remnant to force out such a large SB, he replied. So he's more powerful than Herschel? I replied.
Well, in sheer power, yes. But it's like a boxer with a heavy right hand. It's only more powerful if it lands. Herschel is more powerful in his discipline and stamina. He may not be able to pull out a large subatomic beast, but the fact that he can control as many beasts as he can is just as important as Kel's sheer power, Max intervened. The monster opened its mouth and shot concentrated electric shots toward Joe and Zack. Joe's whip played rally with it, blocking each shot, causing them to explode off his weapon. You ready yet, Zack? Joe asked once more. Zack stood up, taking a deep breath before replying. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go, Zack shot. Zoom! The two shot toward the huge beast, dodging each shot with agile quickness. Now! Zack shot. Whiplash! Joe roped the neck of the beast, pulling it like it was cattle. Okay, go! Joe responded. Ah! Zack grunted, cocking back as he soared high in the air. His blade took in energy until it seemed to be connected to the heavens. Word of advice, Kel. Don't use an electric beast against a dom, he warned, with his eyes blazing with green light energy. Thunder! Slice! The thunder roared as he unleashed his power, slicing the beast's head off with one strike. Go, Joe, now! He ordered. Just as Zack descended, Joe emerged, soaring toward Kel. It was perfect. Kel was off balance and vulnerable. Zack's explosion hit Joe, causing the boy to disappear in the commotion. Thanks for the power, Bulbhead. Let me give you a little of my own. Here, you can have it all, Joe grunted, cocking back angrily. Joe grunted as he soared toward Kel with a boulder of ice energy the size of a baseball. The baseball-sized energy orb continued to grow until it grew to the size of a small boulder. He had Kel dead to rights. There was no place to move. Kel grunted, creating a small energy barrier, but he couldn't make it fast enough, and Joe had him dead center.
He wasn't dodging this one. Kaboom! The boulder exploded against Kel's energy barrier. It created a chain reaction that sent Kel flying into a wall in a loud explosion. Flakes fell down all over the arena as Zek and Joe collapsed. Awesome! Awesome! Eve shot, clapping loudly. Those brats actually pulled it off. Pete, you are a genius, Beth replied, hugging him. Pete nodded humbly as the rest of the Legion shook him and patted him on the back. Hey, it's just a hunch. Throw in Sam's improv skills and things just fell into place. We all played our parts, but they're the ones who deserve the credit, he responded, pointing at the two crouching boys. Max and Jade said they were prodigies, but it's scary to think about their potential. I stood smiling as Kel struggled to rise to his feet, causing us all to pause for a second. He stumbled before collapsing again, causing the crowd to go crazy. Man, I replied, taking a deep breath. I gave the boys an affirming fist pump. They struggled to remain upright. Joe helped Zek to his feet. The battered boys limped over to the proctor, grimacing out of breath. The proctor raised their hands, causing the crowd to explode in applause. They turned to the rest of us as we joined in, clapping and screaming along with the rest of the crowd. They wore goofy, bashful smiles as they waved proudly. I turned to Jade, shaking my head. He said they'd be an asset to the team. I had no idea how right he had been. I mean, they took out 3 competitors. What more could we ask for?